Welcome back to Wealth Mavericks, the podcast where we help doctors unlock the secrets to building generational wealth. And today, we're talking about the hidden battles your employees are fighting and what you can do as a leader to help them overcome them and thrive.
Problems and the blocks to great performing teams. A lot of it has to do with what employees are facing in their individual lives before they even enter the building.
How do they strike that balance between setting standards and expectations, but also understanding that they're a human? Welcome back to the podcast. We're so glad you're here. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, Lori Lara. And we're going to talk through some practical ways that practice owners can help their employees thrive. Lori, it's great to have you. Welcome to the podcast.
I'm so glad to be here, Erin. It's a pleasure to meet you and to talk with you. I love what you guys are doing, so I'm so happy to be here.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad to have you. You have such an incredible background, and I'm really excited for what you're going to share with us, which we'll talk about in a moment. But I'm also excited because you are Joe's sister.
Yes, I am.
Our podcast listeners, yes, are of course familiar with Joe. He's a partner at Terra Firma, and he is a regular around here on Wealth Mavericks. And of course, I've known him for years, and he's had a huge impact in my life, as he has had on so many people. So before we jump into the topic, I would love to hear what it was like growing up with Joe as your brother.
I could sum it up in one word, and it's just wonderful. Joe is an amazing person. I mean, I didn't think I was going to start crying, which I'm not. Joe, I'm not going to start crying on your podcast. But truly, he is one of those people, which you probably know, that there's just this positivity and goodness to him. The energy, and he's just amazing. And he's been that way. I'm 7.5 years older than he is. So I got to see him from when he was a baby all the way to this wonderful man that he is. And he's this way everywhere. And this is how he's been since he was born. So the Joe you meet and the Joe you know is the Joe who he really is and has been since the very beginning. And he's so much fun, right? I mean, when Joe, we have this joke where we just never have enough Joe time in our family. Us being in California and him being out of state, we're just always sad that we don't get to see him on a regular basis, and always love being with him when he comes to town and his family. And it's just amazing. Yeah. So he's been great. And I feel like I'm a walking commercial for Joe Arioto.
So do I sometimes. He probably gets that a lot. Sometimes I'm like, oh, Joe, I'm going to, let's keep you humble around here. But it's hard not to. And you're very lucky that you've known him your whole life. So he, of course, introduced us. He's like, oh, you and Lori are just going to hit it off. I think she would be great on the podcast. So I'm so glad that he introduced us. So before we get into the questions, let me introduce you. So Lori, you have a background in psychology. You hold a master's degree in mental health and wellness with an emphasis in prevention. You are a black belt in martial arts. That's amazing. You've taught mental health, resilience, and self-defense in corporate, nonprofit, and community settings. And you help teams apply these principles to create healthier, more connected workplaces. So you've got a lot to share with us and our listeners today. So to set this up, if you're a practice owner, you know how much your team impacts everything. If your staff isn't happy, if they're not performing well, if there's just this tension that you can feel, it is hard to have a successful business. The energy of your team affects everything. Your patients, your culture, even your own motivation to come to work each day. But when your team is thriving, when people feel valued and healthy and connected, everything changes. Patients are happier, the day runs smoother, and you as the owner actually get to enjoy what you are building. So today we're going to talk about how you as the leader of your practice can directly influence that, how you can create an environment that retains great people and helps everyone perform at their best. So let's start there. Lori, in the work you do, especially with practice owners, what do you see as the biggest issues employers are seeing with their employees?
Well, I would say employers are people too. Employees are people too. So we have this structure of employer, employee, and it's this work environment, this professional setting. But remembering that we're people first. And so when we think about the issues that we as people are facing, we know in mental health, we hear statistics about mental health tanking, not just adults, but young people and all the problems in the world. And when we take a step back out of the structure of employer and employee, and we look at the people issues, because we're dealing with people just like clients are people. So in thinking about holistically what we're discussing, when we think about the problems and the blocks to great performing teams, a lot of it has to do with what employees are facing in their individual lives before they even enter the building to do this beautiful work that you have established. They are a universe unto themselves. So before they open that door, they're dealing with family issues, oftentimes chronic health issues that they don't even tell their employers about. There's so much statistics about mental health, anxiety, depression. We have so many pressures, financial distress. And if anybody's connected to the news, I mean, we're going to be tanking emotionally and mentally for following the news a lot. And oftentimes, back in the day, unless you caught the news at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, you kind of didn't know what was happening in the world. And now, because we have our phones, this phone it's a great tool. It can lead to wonderful connections, but it's oftentimes a source of a lot of stress and a lot of doom scrolling, what they call doom scrolling. And so there are a lot of pressures that employees are facing before they walk in the door. We know substance abuse disorders are through the roof. I mean, COVID wasn't that long ago. I mean, we survived and went through this global pandemic that affected all of us, especially in the medical world. So your practice owners, they know firsthand, they were on the front lines of all of this in terms of the health and well-being and sickness and the world's shutting down, and we all navigated that. And I think it would be a mistake to just not reference that and not realize that there are long-term effects just from the pandemic that people are facing with, maybe the loss of loved ones or chronic issues related to COVID. These things are still at play. Plus, we have a lot of, as I mentioned, substance use disorders. I think it's very easy for employers to forget the people part of what their employees are facing. Relationship issues, divorce, separation, parenting, again, referencing the phone. Your employees, if they are parents, they have a lot of issues that they're facing. So they're straddled with that, and they're carrying it. They're carrying these problems into the practice. And of course, the practice owners want to have a great experience for their clients. Their patients are their North Star. And so we all want to work together to serve the patient. But it would be a mistake for a practice owner to skip over their employee to serve the patient without first serving the employee. So the better an employer, especially a practice owner, can really be mindful and serve their employees in very specific ways, the better they are going to be equipped to deal with their personal problems, that whole universe that they're bringing in. If they can help to resolve some of those issues for their employees in very strategic ways, they will be helping not only the employee, but also their practice, which is what they want to do. So we can't skip over the employee. We must address the employee.
So practice owners have to strike this balance, of course, of I'm paying you and I've hired you to do a job and I expect you to perform well. But at the same time, I can't just ignore the fact that you're a human and you're carrying a lot, like you said. So how do they strike that balance between setting standards and expectations, but also understanding that they're a human? Where is that balance?
Well, we know in healthcare, especially, there's a high burnout rate. There's just so much burnout. There is a lot that people are facing, not just employees, but also the practice owners are facing in their own life. So being able to look at, way back before we knew a lot of information about mental health and before things were being addressed and talked about openly, which is wonderful. Therapy, counseling, coaching is very highly valued more. There's still a lot of stigma, but it's valued more than it used to be, which is wonderful because people are at least discussing their issues. So being able to address burnout in the workplace, being able to address what are the problems my employees are facing while they're at work, and tapping into them as a resource, not just as a problem, but as a resource, I think would be a really good place for them to start and how they view their employees. What one quote of then in the healthcare, when it comes to well-being and bringing those things into their companies in terms of benefits, is seeing your employees as your greatest asset. So having that mindset of this is not transactional. The old school way is that business, I hire you to do X, Y, and Z. So when you come to work, you are going to do X, Y, and Z. And that's very transactional, and it's very important because that's why we're here, to do this good work. But again, taking a step back and seeing the employee that's doing X, Y, and Z for you as a holistic person. And it's not just the problems that practice owners can look at with their employees. How can I help shore them up? Which I know we're going to be talking about a few things that they can be doing. Seeing that not just the problems that they can help address, but also tapping into their strengths. Their employees probably have a lot of strengths that aren't being tapped into. Unless that's done intentionally, they are not going to benefit. Maybe they hire them from X, Y, and Z, but they can get, A, B, C, D, E, F, G also with that, with that employee. So it's being able to not only address the problems, but when employers can tap into the gifts and the talents that employees have that are outside the scope of their role, it not only brings enjoyment into the practice because the employees are expressing those gifts and those talents. So it strengthens the bond. It gives more enjoyment and a sense of belonging if they can use those strengths. But it also can increase the bottom line, reduce absenteeism, fewer sick days. The more an employer can create an environment that's sticky, in where they want to come, employees want to come. They want to say, instead of, oh, I think I might have a fever, gosh, the excuse to not go to work. It's more like, well, I'm just going to take some cold medicine and get in there because I want to do this great work. So it's being able to energize their employees to where they want to come to work. But that takes very intentional leadership.
That's what I was going to say, is that with all the practice owners I work directly with, I hear how overwhelmed and busy they are. It's a big job to run a practice and serve patients and do surgeries and then come home to wife and kids or husband and kids and all of life. Like, they're facing all of the same issues that their employees are facing. So what advice would you give them when they're listening to this and thinking, how do I even carve out the time or the mental capacity to serve my employees at this high level? Like, practically speaking, when should I do it? How should I do it? What advice would you give there?
I think it's important for a practice owner specifically to take a step back and think about, how am I doing as a leader in my organization? There's probably values and mission to serve the patients, but first of all, starting with themselves. How am I taking care of myself? What are the things, if we're going 100 miles an hour, right? If we're, a lot of people live their life like they're driving on the Autobahn, right? It's just highest gear, pedal to the metal, it is just full force ahead, which is great. That's a great, that's a great way of high productivity, but that isn't sustainable if we're ignoring issues, if we're not addressing the problems. So baking into the business that we are going to need to be doing reviews, we're going to need to be doing these pulse checks on, first of all, the practice owner. How am I taking care of myself? How am I doing in those relationships? So that the employees aren't the only ones bringing in the universe of the issues and challenges. And I mean, just even traffic, right? I don't know what the traffic is like coming from the Bay Area and California. I would tell you, you kind of see the worst of people on the road because they're having to, get someplace. So from traffic to relationships to issues, I think a practice owner taking a time out and saying, how am I doing? How am I doing in my life? Because if I'm not taking care of myself as the CEO and leader, that is going to set culture. we're talking about a culture of then not taking care of yourself. Because let's think about this for a second. If I, as a practice owner, am not taking care of myself mentally, emotionally, spiritually, relationally, if I am not taking care of myself, I'm going to have symptoms. I'm going to be stressed out. I'm going to be burned out. And that comes forth in every interaction in the workplace and every interaction at home. And so if I'm pedal to the metal, open Autobahn mode constantly, I'm going to be eroding my mental health. I'm going to be eroding my resilience. It's a downward slope. And I don't care how strong of a person you are, it's going to influence the culture. So just by first, how am I doing? Which is so wonderful what you do with the 5 10s at Terra Firma, which I think it would be great for you to talk about this piece of it with what you do with coaching, because you're not just about saving tax money for these practice owners, which is huge, but you're looking at a holistic picture of how you address your clients and taking care of them. So I think there's a lot of alignment with what you're doing with what it is that I'm talking about, which is so smart for a practice owner to get connected to you on the deepest level, because the coaching that you provide addresses and can help resolve some of the things that we're talking about.
Absolutely, because we know that the best leaders are not going to ask their employees to do, or even their patients to do something that they're not doing themselves. And we understand that there is a lot of burnout, there's a lot of divorce, there's a lot of unhealthiness, and every aspect of life impacts the other, and how you're showing up each day has such an impact on your work, on your family. So yes, we what we like to say is, what good is saving all this tax money and building all this wealth if you lose yourself along the way, or if you sacrifice other parts of your life in order to do it? And so we do monthly check-ins to give our members just the space to take account and just pause and ask themselves, how am I doing across the 5 key areas of life: spiritual, family, business, financial, and fitness? And when we do it every month, we can see trends, upward trends, downward trends. And when we can catch it, like, oh, I'm only a 3 on fitness, I really need to, take care of myself better so I can have the energy to show up. Or I'm a 2 spiritually. Like, what practices can you be putting in place to feel more grounded and peaceful and purpose filled? And we don't tell them what to do, but we ask them, hey, what is something that you can do to impact this? And it's really cool to see, over time, like, yeah, I did do that, I'm feeling a lot better, because it is so important how you show up each day.
Yeah, it's paramount. So if a practice owner is in a chronic burnout stage himself or herself, then she is influencing the culture that way. I love the definition of leadership that Jocko Willink, which the author of Extreme Ownership, such a great book. I love all the things that he has about leadership. And, ex-Navy SEAL, no, sorry, Jocko, ex-Marine. I don't want to make that mistake. So his definition of leadership is influence. So one of the areas that practice owners can really understand that how they operate, just the energy of who they are when they walk into the office, is infectious. And so burnout is contagious, but so is well-being. I mean, you talk to somebody who's super busy and they also are taking martial arts, or they're also involved in a hobby that they just enjoy so much, referencing Joe. Joe is so awesome as a professional and a business person, but he's also a skydiver, and he also loves to do a bunch of other things. And so man, that's really inspiring. Joe's killing it at work and he's doing all these high level professional things, but he also has time to skydive and make these dreams reality. How could that be? So when we talk about resilience training and we talk about stress management, these are some of the things that I do in my corporate trainings that I offer, is being able to help people identify what areas in their life that they're most stressed about. Because again, if we're Autobahn, pedal to the metal, constantly living life like that, because just like employees, when they leave, they're back into their universe of, okay, what am I going to cook for dinner, and having to navigate traffic and relationship issues and those chronic things, that they're back into that framework. So if we can take a pause and ask, how am I doing? What are the areas that I need to address in my life? And I think what I observe in my work is that oftentimes people think, I don't have time for that. I already don't have time to do my work. So you want me to actually talk about how I can improve these other areas? I can tell you I don't have time. And it's a mistake to think that way. That's the way you view it when you are in burnout mode.
Yeah.
So if we think of it as maybe somebody who's significantly out of shape, maybe they have no cardio shape, they haven't exercised in years, and maybe they're in their 50s and they were athletes before and they were in great shape, but life just kind of overtook them and they haven't exercised. When somebody doesn't have a lifestyle of movement, it is very difficult for them to see how they will feel and what will change in them if they started moving their body. So it sounds like I'm going to have to take from these resources that I don't have to do my main thing. You want me to take some of those resources and put it towards something that I don't have time for. But as you know, as a coach, once we start making those changes, you go for just a mile walk, just get up, put your shoes on, just walk around your block. Things change in ways that you cannot anticipate, and energy comes. And not only that, but when we get out of the burnout mindset, creativity starts to open up. Solutions start coming to you. There's a different mindset. We have more access to parts of our brain and our thinking when we are not in a burnout mindset. That's why physical exercise is so very key, not only just to address burnout, but also mental health issues as well. It outperforms exercise and movement outperforms medication when it comes to addressing depression. This is shown in study after study. It is paramount. Yeah. So it's not like I have to stop my life and address all these issues. You can do it while you are also in your busy life.
Yeah. That's such a good point. It's just about how you operate every day. And when you're pouring into yourself, then you can pour into others. So it sounds like there is a big mindset shift that practice owners need to make. And some are already doing this. They're doing an amazing job. They love coming to work. They've had the same staff for years, but others are really struggling in this area to retain, to even feel happy in their work. So one, it's a mindset shift and looking in the mirror, like, what am I doing first to lead by example? And I know you have we want to leave listeners with 4 practical ways that they can help employees thrive. But one thing I really wanted to touch on before we talk about those is also this idea of a shared mission together and knowing what your values are, as coming from the point of a patient too. Like, I have a lot of options when it comes to where I go to the doctor or the dentist. Like, what is going to make me choose your office versus another? And how you operate your employees and that culture and mission plays a big role in the employee experience, but also the patient experience. So what role would you say shared mission and values play in creating a thriving practice?
I think being really clear about what you're doing. What are my values? What is my mission? The more an employee is on board and aligns with that, the stronger the company is going to be. We don't want a bunch of individuals coming in with their mission and values that don't align with the practice, because then you're just going to have a lack of cohesion. So the more a practice owner can really live and embody and be very clear about those missions and values and what they want their patients to experience, because how employees are behaving and feeling in their life ties directly into how they treat the patients. And that's going to set culture. So the happier an employee is and the better aligned they are with the values and the mission, then everybody's just on the same page. So I think that's very important in that it's communicated in a way that employees really get the mission. It reminds me of the book Good to Great. So there's Collins talked about 3 things: getting the right people on the bus, getting the wrong people off the bus, and getting the right people in the right seats. So being able to have the mission is kind of like that wrap around the bus. You want to make sure that when people are onboarding into your company, that they know what the missions and values are. They know what bus they're getting on. So that's really clear from the moment they're hired to the moment that, they engage and work, creating opportunities for employees to be able to understand their strengths, to be able to understand their gifts, to align and make sure they're in the right seat. Because you might have a great employee who understands your mission and values, but if they're not sitting in the right seat within your organization, you're not going to get the best of them, nor are they going to have a full experience. So this is kind of multi-layered, but shared mission and values is kind of the juice. It's the why we're doing what we're doing. And I'll give you an example of how strong this can be when employees are fully aligned with the mission of a medical practice. So one of the workshops, one of my clients, I go down and train 4 locations of their staff, and I've been doing this monthly for 2.5 years, and it's been wonderful. And this practice owner really invests in his employees and cares about what they're dealing with. He also cares about the bottom line and burnout and sick days and, people leaving and what's going on. And so wanting to build a really strong practice because the patient care is utmost, importance to him. So he had me come in and do, it was actually an event that he'd had for his employees where I taught a self-defense workshop. So empowering their patients, because there's a lot in the news about safety, a lot of females in employees. So we did a workshop, and my program has a lot of mental health and wellness skills embedded. It's not just about throat chopping, which is a lot of fun to learn how to throat chop, but you have to get your mind straight. You have to get your emotions straight. So we did this event, and the employees loved it. I mean, they were just jazzed and super excited. There's something about empowering, especially empowering a female so she knows that she knows how to take care of business if something happens. So taking the mystery out of crime, understanding how it happens, what they can do to keep themselves safe, helps to calm the mind, which a calm mind is a more creative mind and a better mind. So I went down, did this, and that one time, what we thought was going to be a one-time workshop has turned into 2.5 years of workshops. So surveying them. It was very important for this practice owner. I want you to ask my employees what is on their mind, what do they need? So we did a survey, and I gave them maybe a list of 15 topics, from stress management to building assertiveness, confidence, healthy boundaries. What are the areas that are important to you in your life? And from that, I've created this content and these trainings, and every month I go down, and it's just amazing because they feel cared about, and they feel like their needs are being addressed, and they're able to grow and develop so they can bring a better self to the practice. So it's just a really good thing. So addressing the issues that the employees are facing is a very empowering way that practice owners can bring that. So in one of the trainings, one of the questions that I had them do with each other, because we were creating team cohesiveness in these trainings, it's not just you want to learn about stress management for your life and your universe when you leave, but how you can do that at work and with each other. So one of the questions we did in a check-in is I asked them, in your practice, bringing the values and mission of the organization, what are some examples of what you do here that matter to you? Give me a story. So they thought about each other, and then they partnered with each other, and they shared stories back and forth of how they are applying with the patients the missions and values of the organization. And I'll tell you, it was such a beautiful training at each location that I went to, because I go to 4 different locations, and each team had such special stories of how they're serving the patients within the mission and values. I mean, they were crying. They were so excited to understand their role, from front office to back office to dealing with referrals to medication management to the providers. It was this beautiful sharing of stories of how that is. So it's not just, hey, here are the values. It's an employee handbook, sign on the dotted line, come do X, Y, Z for me. It's then asking them, how do you see yourself serving the patients? And what ends up happening is this meaning and purpose that gets embedded into the practice. It gets baked in, and it becomes this solid foundation where people understand their role in their unique position in this organization, how I am bringing forth this mission and values that this CEO wants. And it's just beautiful. And then what ends up happening is, what they end up seeing is, not only am I doing X, Y, Z for somebody, but the deeper meaning of addressing the needs of the patient and understanding their role. You know, I'll tell you, we had some significant health issues with one of our kids that we had to deal with. And as a mom, it's very challenging to have to deal with issues that you feel out of control when it comes to your kid. You cannot get closer to the jugular than dealing with parents when it comes to their kids' health or safety, things like that. So I was able to share, look, when you are addressing a patient and they come into your office, they're dealing, especially in a pediatric setting, you are dealing with sometimes life and death. You are dealing with diagnoses that they feel overwhelmed with. You are dealing with issues that are the jugular issues of these people. When you understand that when they come in, if you're front office, and they're coming in with their universe and their stresses, and they come to you and you address them and just look them in the eyes and say, I'm so glad you're here. How are you doing? How can I help you today? Just that care, it just helps a patient to feel seen and heard and cared about, which is the structure of the practice, right? When you're in a medical practice, you're dealing with a lot of sensitive issues. So when front office understands how you greet that patient, just how you greet them is going to impact their entire world. And when they feel supported, they are going to want to keep coming back. So they're going to want to keep coming back. And so I was able to share, when we were making phone calls and appointments to address the needs that we were dealing with our child, it was the medical staff. And I could share very specific stories of how, just in referrals, how you treat patients is everything. You may not have all the answers, but if we can slow it down, get off the Autobahn and realize that it's person first, task second. If we can really remember that we're dealing with people who have a lot of issues, perhaps, it can make all the difference in the world and can help make that a sticky practice where patients want to keep coming back, not just for what they need, the medical, the prescription, or I got to check this box off because I need my child to get a clearance to play sports, whatever it is. So again, it's taking it out of transaction and into the relationship, which is so very important and easy to forget when you got a bunch of clients and everybody's burned out. So you just almost like this assembly line. But when patients feel like they are just one in a line, oh man, you're going to lose that to a practice that understands that we're dealing with people. And if you address the people, they're going to keep coming back.
Absolutely. And despite all of our differences, we as people are so the same when it comes to, one, we're just kind of naturally selfish. So of course we're thinking about me and my experience and my day, and I'm going to bring this in. But like, when you can remind yourself that, okay, I'm dealing with people who feel the same way and they're bringing their own world into this, and to become others focused, like you just said, is such just an important reminder to just remind yourself each day. But also when you're talking about employees, like we connect as humans through stories. And when you are able to facilitate things like that for your employees, it helps them connect with each other, have deeper roots in where they're at, and like you said, feel a sense of purpose, like what I do matters, because that is just a basic human need that we all have. And we spend so much of our time at work. And if you come to work each day and you don't really know what your purpose is or if you're valued, it makes it really hard to show up as your best. So I love when you're talking about too, the self-defense thing that you put on, like, instead of, let's go to happy hour again, like, no, let's do something badass, like have a self-defense. I think you should come down to Texas next time we're all together and host a self-defense.
I'm there.
the team, I'll have Joe set it up. Have your people call
That
my
would be a
people.
lot of fun. It's very
I would
empowering.
love that.
Yes.
Yeah. So that is all. So much good information. So to start wrapping up, let's give our listeners some tangible things that they can start doing to shift that mindset, but also really start helping their employees thrive in their practice.
Yes. So, when we think about what are some practical takeaways, and we've been discussing the deeper kind of the foundation, first of all, take care of yourself, number one, because leadership starts with self-leadership first. So
Yes.
taking responsibility for what I'm putting out there, not just that I have this business and these employees need to do this job. They're very blessed to have a job, and that's probably all very true. But how am I taking care of myself? How am I influencing the space that I have created? And what energy am I bringing into? And what are some areas that I might need to improve? Now, it takes a lot of humility, but it also is starting with yourself first, which you have to do that as a leader. When we're dealing with parents, we say, okay, your child is having, behavior issues. You have to think about what are you bringing into the relationship. If you think about couples counseling, oftentimes, this one therapist was saying most of the time she gets couples in there and it's like, each person is thinking, if you would just have them do what they need to do, this relationship would be awesome. But the problem is both people feel that way. So it's really taking account for your own life first. I can't overemphasize that enough. That's not just a box to check. It's life's work. Is for us to take care of ourselves mentally and emotionally. What are my thoughts that I'm having? What are my attitudes that I have toward my employees, especially my difficult ones? If someone's calling out sick a lot, that can create a lot of strain in the practice. A lot of issues. So there can become this cynicism and this pessimism, that this attitude towards somebody who's not doing the XYZ. It can create this tension versus taking a step back and thinking, okay, what might my employee be dealing with? What are the root causes? Them not showing up or calling out and causing havoc within my practice is not the problem. What's happening and where can I shore up? So starting with themselves, very, very important. Number two, I would say caring about your employees. Jocko Willink, he has this line where he says, if you don't care about your team, they 100% know about it and they will not take care of you. True care, you cannot fake it. And if you do not have care, which being in burnout mode and stress mode, that care and those softer, deeper commitment, relational commitment, if that doesn't show up in care when we're in burnout mode, care can go by the wayside because we have to take care of business, right? But if we're just all about business and I'm not expressing that I care, it's not going to go well. So, the best leaders are ones that truly care about their team. It's so very important. And that doesn't have to take a lot of time. It's not like you have to have, these big meetings that take a ton of time. It's the energy that you bring. Just like you want your patients to be greeted, front office may only have 30 seconds with someone, but those 30 seconds can be high quality. They can be the difference between someone feeling cared about and not feeling cared about. So you can change the culture just by caring about your team. We know this in everyday life. Let's talk about road rage just for a quick second, because it kind of sets the stage about caring. So we're on the road. That there's a lot of people cutting people off and driving crazy because everybody's got to get to that place on time. But one of the things that I teach in my self-defense about de-escalation, which also is about employee wellness too, is de-escalating. And somebody is really jacked up. So one small thing that I really encourage people to do while they're driving is to be mindful of, when you get to that stop sign, when you're like the right of way, no, I got there first. And so people might accelerate to get to the stop sign so you can go first and everything. And so purposely slowing down and letting that person go first. It'll change your whole experience driving. You just try it. purposely let people in. If they're on the freeway and they miss their exit and it's like, oh no, you're not getting in front of me, and so you might speed up, this escalating of stress. Let them in. You will notice a big change in how you feel as a driver, but also what happens is, because I've tested this and I've done this quite a bit, stopping at the stop signs. And I was there first. I should have had the right of way. And I wave the person on and the person's like, oh, and one time this lady goes, oh no, you go. And I'm like, no, you go. And we were laughing in our car, trying to wave each other on. And so she ended up driving along and I got behind her. I mean, how much time are we saving? Maybe 2 seconds, 3 seconds, but what it costs that person, because there's that ripple effect. When we care about people, I don't know this lady at the stop sign, but if I have a sense of care toward her, it's going to change the interaction. It's a brief interaction. I'll probably never see her again, but that stays with her. And that kindness stays with her. And then she's probably more likely to let somebody else in down the line. And so that's how we can really stop road rage, is just let somebody go, let somebody in, let them come in and let them go first. When we really think about it, that care is so very powerful. So practice owners having true care. It's an energy, it's a smile, it's a how you doing, it's knowing their name, all of that. Number 3, listen to them. This is really key. So if practice owners can implement a well-being survey into their practice, how's my team doing? So you can do this from an anonymous perspective. Like, I just really want to hear how you're doing. And there's lots of different ways to survey your employees to understand their well-being, from a brief pulse check-in to a more comprehensive, like, what are the issues that you're dealing with that might reveal areas that they might need some training or some support in. So listening to them. It's one of the greatest needs we have as a human being, is to be listened to. That's why therapy can be so beneficial. Not that the therapist has all the answers. We have the answers inside of us. But if we can just talk and someone can hold that space, it can be very, very powerful. So listening to them and that space to get that feedback, but not only listening to them of what are their issues they're dealing with, but also what are the areas that you're dealing with that are time robbers. I have a whole series on the time robbers. If your employees are oftentimes dealing in inefficient systems and they know it, but they might also have some solutions to those problems. So if you can listen to them, not only in the problems, but what are the solutions that they see, they are at ground level and will have solutions that you as a practice owner don't have because you're not in their role. And that can not only improve efficiency, but it can also help enlist their help, which they're going to feel very empowered. And if you incentivize that, if you say, hey, we're dealing with efficiency issues, or we want to be able to create a more efficient practice. What are your time robbers and what are some solutions? And if we implement your solution, maybe give them a bonus, or maybe it's, I don't know, $50 Starbucks. If you can improve efficiency and well-being for a $50 Starbucks card, that's going to be worth it. So there are a lot of creative things that practice owners can do. And I would say lastly, to empower them. Empower them in their areas of their life that they need help. And this is where, if you invest in trainings, if you invest in being able to provide, sometimes in benefits, they'll have gym memberships or they'll have, other perks. Maybe counseling would be great. And these things are great. Coaching is a great opportunity to be able to help your team in their individual lives, because the better they're able to manage their personal life before they walk in that door to your practice, the better employees they're going to be, the happier they're going to be. They're going to be bringing in that energy. For example, I'll tell you one of the greatest series that I've been able to train is about setting healthy boundaries. Setting healthy boundaries is one of the stickiest in a not good way in a person's life. And when there's a lot of energy that's spent saying yes to things that we want to say no to. And so learning how to set healthy boundaries. So practice owner might be thinking, well, how is teaching my employees how to set better boundaries? How's that going to help me? Well, if an employee can set healthier boundaries in their personal lives, they're going to have more energy. They're going to have more confidence. They are going to feel better in their life. And I can close with this, because boundary setting thing gave us this moment in this training. So I'll change her name. I'll change her name to Lisa. So we had done this training. We were in a 4-part series about setting healthy boundaries, helping them understand that they have to take responsibility to set boundaries. If you cannot say no to your mother-in-law, if you cannot say no to your child, if you cannot say no to the teacher, or whatever areas in your life, you're going to be draining energy that you could be using in your work, that you could be using to have a hobby, things like that. Most people struggle with learning how to set healthy boundaries. It's really not something that's in the curriculum in school and upbringing. Yeah. So we were in this series, and so we were doing a check-in. I had done the first part, taking responsibility and what the costs are in our lives when we do not set healthy boundaries. So we were doing a check-in. How's everybody doing? Are you doing the practices in your life? Because we have practices that they do, and then I come in the next month. So we're going around the circle. How's everybody doing? How are you applying this? If people are sharing their stories, and I'll call her Lisa. Lisa's got her hands closed like this, and she's just listening. And I'm like, what's going on with her? I couldn't really read her energy. She's just like this, listening to the coworkers, and it got to her. And I said, so Lisa, what have you been practicing about setting boundaries? And she says, I like to say no. I like to say no, because I'm teaching them about being able to practice just to say no. And she said, because Lisa takes care of everybody else, but who's taking care of Lisa? And the lights went on in her, and realizing that she could say no. And she was feeling so empowered in her life to be able to not do the things that she did not want to keep doing. And that translated into the workplace, and everybody started laughing, and everybody started enjoying what it is to set boundaries. So I would say empowering, finding ways, asking your employees, what is important to you? What's hurting? And finding creative ways of helping to empower them in their life so that you're addressing those issues that they're facing.
Wow. You shared so much goodness here. And I didn't ask you this offline, but I think I'm going to want you back on the podcast, because you gave so many nuggets of like, oh, we do this and we do this. I think there's so much more we could talk about and offer here. But this was amazing. Thank you. Great. So I think for a lot of people, I'm sure this conversation is inspiring. Like, yes, I want to make some changes, but it's also like, okay, where do I start? So if I were just going to make one change today, what would it be?
If there's only one, I'd have to say start with yourself. You have to start with yourself. How am I doing? When it comes to your employees and you influencing their well-being, you are so very powerful in their life. If they see you coming in with this positive energy and caring about people and caring about them, it is infectious. So if a practice owner does nothing else in their life and their practice to help their employees, take care of yourself. And if you do that and you take the time to do that, it is infectious. So if there's only one thing, I always have to start with taking that personal responsibility. It's that self-leadership. Yeah.
That's great. That self-reflection. How am I doing? And going back to the 5 10s, it's just this simple framework of like, okay, this is how I'm doing. Now, what is one thing I can control that I can do to improve? And it's a snowball effect. You're either in an upward spiral or a downward spiral, and it all starts with that self-awareness. So that is so good. Lori, where can people find you or follow you if they want to learn more about what you do?
Probably my website would be great, of just lorilara.com, or shoot me an email, lori@lorilara.com. And super easy to find. But yeah, that would be a great way to connect. And I would love to come back, Erin. I would love to come back. So thank you. Yes, that would be wonderful. Awesome. Yeah.
And I really do want to meet you in person and have you come serve the Terra Firma team in some way. So we're going to talk about that with Joe.
Okay.
Thank you so much for being here. Doc, we hope you enjoyed this conversation. Please subscribe, share with your friends,